Welcome to Source Medicine. My name is Nikolay Ayerov, quantum security specialist and founder of Avo Peace.
And I'm Anita, medical herbalist, biomedical scientist, intuitive healer, and frequency medicine practitioner. Together, we explore what it means to remember that healing doesn't start with fixing something broken, but with listening to what is already whole.
Each week, we'll travel between the seen and the unseen, from ancient herbal wisdom, nutrition, and nervous system science, to energy work, polarity, and the quiet intelligence that moves through all of us.
Our conversations aren't prescriptions, they are invitations. We are not here to tell you what's true, but to help you feel truth in your own body.
So wherever you are, walking, driving, taking a rest, let it remind you that you are part of the medicine.
This is Source Medicine.
Hello, guys. This is Nikolay. We're back for Source Medicine, episode number 12. And we're talking about the sun today and all of the things that it brights your life up in some way, some shape. As always, we have our wonderful co-host, Dr. Anita Wasik.
And my lovely co-host, Nikolay Ayerov.
Oh, thank you. What do you have to tell us today about the sun? And how can you brighten our day up?
I would actually like to start about the more physical aspects of the sun. We know that the sun is really huge fusion reactor, yeah? And the radiation that reaches the earth, it's composed on 50% the infrared light, 45% of the visible light, on only 3 to 7% of the ultraviolet, means UV light, yeah? So everybody just associate the sun with the UV, but that's just a little percentage. But if we go through all of these radiations and the aspect on our health also. So let's start with the UV. It's the shortest, but the high energy wavelength. So sun will emit UVC, that is the shortest, and it's fully absorbed by the ozone layer. So it doesn't, in like normal condition, doesn't reach even our skin. So for the sun exposure, it's not relevant. Then we have UVB, that it's partially filtered by the atmosphere, and the amount of a UVB depends on the latitude, season, and the time even of the day. In the Nordic part of the world, especially in the winter, the UVB is close to zero, and the UVB reaches the top layer of our skin, the epidermis, the primary driver of the sunburn and DNA damage and potential cancer risk. And then we have UVA. This radiation doesn't depend on the season or the day. It's always the same, let's say. And it doesn't reach the surface of the skin. It actually reaches the deeper layers of the dermis of the skin. And it's responsible for the, let's say, usage of nitric oxide. So it's a chemical compound that it's, for example, in our skin, the nitric oxide will help to dilate the vessels and lower the blood pressure. And of course, we have to replenish this nitric oxide. And so that's why it's good to, when you are exposed to sun, to eat food that are rich in nitric. Like, for example, leafy greens, beetroots. Nitric oxide will affect our blood pressure. And this is why the studies show that people who live more further from the equator and are not exposed to sun suffer more from high blood pressure.
The less sun exposure you have, the higher risk you have of having a higher blood pressure.
Yes, exactly. And then we have the visible light, so light between 400 and 700 nanometers, something we can actually see. Yeah? And there's particular wavelength between 460 and I think 480 nanometers, which is the blue light. There's a lot of talks nowadays about that blue light, but here is the thing. It's necessary for our circadian rhythm, absolutely necessary for our pineal gland to recognize when it's the day, so the body can start to produce cortisol and shut down melatonin, the sleep hormone, and when it's the evening, so actually the cortisol will go down and melatonin will go up, and of course we can sleep. When we are exposed during the day to the sun without the sunglasses, our retinal cells, so kind of the special cells in our eyes that are not into helping us with vision. The entire job is actually to feed the light information to the pineal gland, the master circadian clock. So when you wake up and it's dark, the body will still think, because you are not exposed to that blue light, the body will still think, okay, it's night, so let's sleep. That's why in the winter time we are more sleepy in the morning. Quite crucial is to be exposed to that light, and during the day don't wear anything that would filter the blue light. It's different in the evening. I usually see people, especially this biohacking, that they would wear glasses that protect them, these yellow glasses that protect them from
Because
the
typically blue
blue.
light is the concern on like the screens, the phones, the tablets.
Yes, and
That's
it's
what
an
I think most
absolute.
people hear about blue light from screens, but I haven't even heard of blue light coming from the sun. So this is very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but we have to remember that the radiation sent by the sun changes during the day.
Yeah.
So to keep our circadian rhythm as healthy as possible. So the blue light is absolutely no in the evening time, because we want to sleep.
Sure.
Yeah, we don't want to get activated with cortisol. So yes, blue light filters in the evening, no screen time in the evening, and so on. Yeah. Then we have another, let's say, type of radiations, which is the infrared. So something between 700 nanometers and 1 millimeter. So it's the largest shed of solar energy, but it's less discussed. That infrared is still divided into near infrared, middle infrared, and the far infrared. So the near infrared will penetrate deep tissues, not just the skin, but deep tissues, and it's absorbed by the mitochondria. So the kind of energy producing organelles in every single cell in our body to actually produce energy. And of course, now the infrared are used also in so-called red light therapy for different health problems, or even in athletes.
Help you sweat in a better way. Yeah.
Yeah, like infrared sauna. Yeah. It's kind of a very potent, let's say, detox.
And you mentioned something about sunglasses, because so many people wear sunglasses. This is like a multi-billion-dollar business, and everybody loves the sunglasses. And they're like, oh, I should have brought my sunglasses because it's so bright outside, and it hurts my eyes or whatever it is. But for me, like I'm someone with light eyes, blue eyes. Typically, I am significantly more sensitive to light. But in my life, I never even considered the fact that I wanted to put sunglasses onto my face. I will always dim my screens. I will have like a blue light filter on my screens. Sometimes I even had blue light filters on my glasses because, mostly for screens. But now that, blue light is also can potentially affect you outside, it's a whole interesting factor. But this is also another understanding of what can we do to de-stress our bodies, right? And obviously, when you're screwing your body's tablet, what do you call it, regulator in your eyes, for, if you're always wearing sunglasses, that can potentially affect also your sleep cycle, right? And then anytime you affect your sleep cycle, you're automatically affecting your health in a profound way.
Absolutely. You start to increase the
yeah.
risk of pretty much every single disease, because when you don't sleep, the inflammation is increasing in the body. And where's the inflammation? Pretty much this is the, let's say, a molecular root cause of many chronic illnesses. But the sunglasses are strongly related to actually sunburn. Yet the circadian rhythm.
Yeah, this is also an interesting thing I've heard.
So I want to explain this. When you wear sunglasses, the cells in the eyes cannot understand, is it dark or is it not dark? And the brain will not get signal that will be sent to our cells in the skin called melanocytes to produce the pigment, melanin, in the skin. So when you don't produce that pigment, that means you are also more prone to the sunburn, because the pigment is there to protect us. Yes. When you wear sunglasses, this pigment will not be produced. And this is when you look, for example, at even statistical data, people from, let's say, 50s, 60s, last century, they rarely got sunburns because the sunglasses were not popular at that time.
Interesting.
Another level of this whole sunburns and so on, and whole risk factor, is also sunscreens. Imagine that everybody now goes to the sun, and it's putting already a lot of layers of the sunscreen. Yeah, and I understand the point. I understand
And
because we
sunscreen
think
is basically it's just chemicals, right? That are made to reflect the sun from not heating your the UV rays to not penetrate your skin and protect your skin, as
There
they
are actually two fundamental different categories of sunscreen. So one is
sure.
this chemical, means organic filters, like
Yes.
exactly all those chemicals. So idea of them is that they absorb UV radiation on the skin, and
Yes.
they will convert this to the heat. And there are
Okay.
the mineral filters, other name is physical filters, like
Yeah.
zinc dioxide, titanium dioxide, that they will only sit on the surface of the skin. They will not absorb the radiation. They will reflect
Yeah.
the UV. Both of these methods have pros and cons, and of course, they all both have health risks because, for example, titanium dioxide is really strong carcinogenic compound. Like most of the chemical filters, which have like benzene type of chemicals, yeah, oxybenzene, avobenzenes, and so on. And there are already studies that were founded by American government, yeah, clinical trials published in I think 2019, 2020, that they were testing different compounds in these UV filters and the time, how long they can be used, and when it's the kind of the threshold that the body gets absorbed them into them and cannot even remove from the body. So those ingredients show that already 2 hours after applying of the sunscreen, you
Yeah.
reach the threshold of that chemical in your body. Yeah, but
So
they
let's just say you put this chemical on your you said that there's two types, right? So you put the first one that's supposed to absorb radiation, right?
yeah, we
And
now I talk about this chemical. Yeah,
yeah, perfect. So basically anything you put on your skin automatically wants to absorb it, right? Because,
absolutely.
and so doesn't matter if you ingest it or not, because most people think they can only absorb things when they ingest things. But when you put something on your skin,
Mhm.
you're now also absorbing it because just
It's
like you said,
digested, let's
yeah,
say.
your
Mhm.
the what do you call it? The skin is a detox organ as well. So
Mhm.
it can release, but it can also absorb. So it's like a sponge. At the same time, it's also, a sponge can squeeze out and absorb, right?
Mhm.
So explain to us now, yeah, the this whole process of
Mhm.
how these chemicals can actually be absorbed into your skin. And this also, connects to our constant topic of how can we de-stress our body, right? How can we remove stressors in our system or toxins in our system which we potentially don't need to put into our system, right?
Mhm.
Because everyone's putting this on their skin because they believe or they've been told that this protects them from potential cancerous effects down the line, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
in relation to those chemicals presented in sunscreens, as I said already, one single application can lead to like the highest threshold of the amount of that particular chemical in the body. And the studies also showed that if you stop using the sunscreen, the chemicals can persist in the body for another 3 weeks. Yeah,
3 weeks.
three
Wow.
weeks. So imagine yourself in the summertime at the seaside for a week, putting few times per day those chemicals on you. So how they are absorbed, of course, skin is the biggest organ with a lot of micro veins. So these chemicals will go through the circulation. Yeah, and when they are in the circulation, they will be redistributed. They will go into our lymphatic system, the lymphatic system that is supposed to detox us, and we are actually clogging that lymphatic system with those chemicals. So other, like for example, metabolic waste products cannot be removed. Yeah, and people start to feel ill, start to feel dysregulated.
Where are these chemicals going? And how are they stored in the body? Would they be going into liver? Would they be
Well,
going
it
into
depends on
your
the
fat
chemical. Each
tissues?
each chemical
Yeah.
is also processed a bit different way. It's about the group of chemicals, but of course they will go through the liver, clogging the liver, making super harm for the liver. They will go through the kidneys, yeah, to filter. We have to pee those chemicals out. There are actually studies, I think, done in Finland when they put different lotions on babies, and they collected urine, and they really saw that whatever chemical was in that cream or lotion ended up in the urine, of course, the metabolite of that chemical, but that really showed that whatever you put on your skin will enter the body. And I always tell the same, that if you cannot eat something that you put on your skin, just don't use it.
Is there any benefits to actually putting sunscreen potentially on your skin? Because obviously there's a lot of drawbacks and there's a lot of toxins that you're taking into your body, right? And then that's obviously adding additional stress to what everything else that is happening in your life. So it's still, I stress the fact how incredibly resilient the body is. This is not the only thing we're doing. There's 12,000 other things that we're simultaneously putting into our body, from our food to the products, to the perfumes, to the chemicals of cleaning, so many different things. And then you're talking about pollution, then you're talking about this. So if you really start looking back on all the things your body is dealing with on a constant basis, and we're not even talking about stress, we're not talking about emotions, we're not talking about, how people treat you, how you feel about yourself, all of these things. And this is all happening all at the same time. As you listen through all of our episodes, we're just slowly giving you the source code of how incredible your body is and the little steps you can take to make life a little better, right? To make your life easier. Yeah, let's go back to that, to the understanding of, is there any benefits to put sunscreen on your skin? And obviously there's two layers, because I'm gonna give you a quick a side note. In Hawaii, when I lived there for 2 years back in 2022, they actually started banning sunscreen, not because it's bad for people, but it was because it was bad for the coral reef, right? And because when people go inside the water, obviously it bleeds into the water, and it goes and actually started killing the coral reefs.
Yeah, and
So
people don't think about it, that they pollute like the
exactly. But then they started saying that some zinc form of sunscreen was ended up not leaching into this in the system, but it's also claimed to be a healthier, holistic option to protect you from the sun's rays, right? So
yes, of course there are pros and cons on both
yeah.
type
So
of
first, let's talk about
filters.
the first one. Is there benefits? And then we'll talk into the second layer.
The
And
benefit is like that in general. Let's say we already spoke about the negative aspects of sun lotions. The benefit is like this, that if you need to be exposed, let's say, and you cannot escape that exposure during that particular time, it's better to put once the sunscreen and not be burned. And because what I observe, the people usually go for holiday, they spend the winter in dark winter, and the spring comes, they go somewhere in the south of Europe for holiday, or to Asia, and they are just exposing themselves and getting sunburns. So the point is to actually train your body, to train your skin slowly to the point that you will not need that sunscreen. And
yeah,
this is
because
what I
eventually
did.
it browns a little.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
what you're
I
saying,
was living in Crete, and I never used a sunscreen. Of course, yeah, the skin got at the beginning a bit reddish. Then you can support that skin, of course, with natural methods.
hydration obviously
But
is very
yes,
important.
and they're like putting even fermented milk products like yogurt, kefir on the skin to cool down. Yeah, but and internally the diet, like carotene rich foods like carrots, what else there is, sweet potatoes, pumpkin, and so on. I teach the skin to be exposed at the particular time of the day for only a few minutes without the glasses, so my skin created pigment that protects me. And if I needed to put something on myself, I put like raspberry seed oil, which is known to be UV protector. What I wanted to tell still about the sunscreens is that I consider that if you are in the situation that you are exposed to sun, for example, there is some sport competition, yeah, that you have to run in the sun for like 4 hours. Yeah, of course, the best is if you have protecting clothes. But if you cannot do it, luckily you put the sunscreen, because better is to put the sunscreen for short period of time and every now and then that to get a sunburn, because the sunburn, not the sun itself, but the sunburn is linked to skin cancer. And also the use of the sunscreens can be, nowadays, there are studies that started to link the chemicals in the sunscreens to cancers. They are linked already to endocrine disruption, so all hormonal problems. But nowadays also the science shows that using those sun lotions can increase the risk of skin cancer as well.
I want to zoom back a little bit because I want to weigh the pros and cons, right? Because this is how you make, we're helping you move to the decision so you don't have to, spin in your head about this because there's already a million different things you're trying to take out of your life. So we want to make this as simple as possible. The reason you would put on sunscreen is to protect yourself from potentially getting burned, right? And
Yes.
going through the uncomfortable situation of peeling and, painful skin. But then also, is there a chance, because obviously how cancer is typically formed, right, is when the cell is damaged too much and at a certain point it cannot repair itself, right? So then cell starts to metastasize. And this is the main concern, right, of why you want to protect your skin, right, to not develop skin cancer later on, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But now you're saying the application of something that's supposed to protect our skin is also, going to lead us to the same path, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how can someone with just basic logical skills understand which pathway is best for them to protect their body and their skin? And then, because you mentioned at one point a raspberry seed oil, which I think anybody would understand, that's probably not going to cause cancer, right? So what what
No.
what different options are there for people that don't want to put chemicals in their system because they're very sensitive, or they just prefer not to put chemicals on their body, right?
Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, the raspberry seed oil, yeah, there are different also plants that can be used in the form of oils to protect the skin. Of course, clothes, natural clothes like
Yeah.
cotton and linen to protect from the
Yeah,
skin,
like a
especially
long shirt.
linen.
Yeah.
Yeah, long shirt.
Exactly. So if you're
The
going for a
hat,
run, or if you're working out all day, or if you're mowing the lawn,
yes,
something like
just
that, you
put
just
long
you put a
sleeves.
hat on, you put a long sleeve on, something that's breathable, something's not going to suffocate you, obviously. There's
Mm-hmm.
plenty of UV, I think, blocking clothing out there nowadays. Hopefully the clothing is not also doesn't seep through, because if it's UV blocking, there might be chemicals in there.
Yes,
Who
I just wanted to mention
yeah.
that use natural clothes. I actually would like us to talk one day
Oh,
about the clothes in general and they effect on our health. Linens and cotton, wool is too warm, of course, for
yeah,
the
of course.
summertime. In the winter is okay. But
So
those
would a
two,
linen be a good protection against the
yes,
sun?
yes, it helps. It helps a lot. And then,
Okay.
of course, the hat, like
Sure.
more wilder hat, so to cover a bit, to make a shadow for the neck and for the ears. The ears are very sensitive, and the nose. Of course, like you don't have to go out. If you don't have to go out in the most worst
Yeah.
time of the day, just don't go out. But I would really start from the springtime. I would like to go out to the sun for 15-20 minutes per day without any sunscreen, especially like irradiate yourself with the sun on your skin, on your chest, because this is where also there is abdomen, there is whole immune system, yeah, there is all the organs that need a sun also for the work. So it's not just the pineal gland that needs a sun to kind of control the circadian rhythm, but also our organs need sun to work properly and to be in their own rhythm. So exposing abdomen, exposing the chest as a preparation before the summertime. The point is general to do really controlled exposure. Yeah. And this is something what I also wanted to mention historically. In 19th century, they started to build a places called sanatoria, the places that started to use nature for the healing. Yeah, there were places that use like salt, there were places that use the water, and there was places that use therapy with the sun. And there was a German physician who found that tuberculosis, so the lung infection, can be treated using the sun exposure. And he found it's kind of one of the sanatorium in Sokołowo, that's in Poland. So the people were lying in the bed and they were exposed at the particular time of the day for particular amount of minutes that were adjusted individually to that particular case. And they also were exposed to fresh air and the regular physical activity. Yeah. And the readouts were really good. Then, the medical field started to get more interested. So those kind of sanatoria got more popular in Europe. They even reached the US. And in the 20th century, then, of course, there were some scientists who eventually got the idea for the bright lights to use them during the winter time. So they would kind of copy almost the sun, because we have to remember that in the winter time, when we don't have sun, many processes are shut down. We cannot produce D vitamin anymore. Yeah,
True.
Especially in the Nordic countries. There's absolutely no way to produce vitamin D because, as I mentioned, the UVB is almost close to zero, and that's the radiation that is needed for the vitamin D production.
And is this because of the cloud cover, or is it because of the way the Earth is tilted in that moment?
Oh, actually, of course, people then should supplement vitamin D, but we have to remember that synthetic form of vitamin D will not cover all the function of naturally produced vitamin D in the body.
Okay.
And also, if you take supplements and you stop taking them, the vitamin D starts to decrease in the serum, while the natural vitamin D produced by the sun in our skin, the level will still be quite high for quite a long period of time.
You only need like 20 minutes, from what they understand, of just sun exposure to get basically your whole dose.
Yes, there is application or website, I don't remember the name, but people can just Google it, that you put your location and it calculates how much sun exposure you need that particular day, because it takes into account, of course, the location of that place, but also the weather in that particular day. So you can look for something like that, and then you know how much the minimum exposure to produce enough of vitamin D would be for you in that particular place, in that particular day. Those were kind of interesting facts already from the history. People already then noticed like how important the vitamin D, not only vitamin D, but the whole sun exposure is for our health. Like look at the mood, like our mental health, when people are very happy in this very warm countries, sunny countries. Yeah, people are usually, they struggle financially, their life is not easy, but they're happy, because the less exposure you have to sun, the most suicidal thoughts the person can have. It's actually, there's also studies showing that when you are exposed to sun, you have 7% less chances of suicide. And that's why statistically there's more suicides in the Nordic countries than in the countries like, for example, in South Europe.
So here's the question that I have. So humans have been around for hundreds and thousands of years at this point, I would imagine. I don't think skin cancer has really been recorded as far as like been being known. If we're to say that the sun potentially is harmful to us, right? Obviously, because it can burn. But at the same time, humans are extremely adaptable, right? But what I'm talking about is now we have, the African population that's always exposed to sun, probably, multiple hours a day, very little shelter sometimes. And if they do have it, it's just through a tree, through their housing, but they're always out, they're always doing something like that. Obviously, they have a significant amount more melanin in their skin than, the people that have less, let's just say.
White people, yeah.
Exactly. How does this correlate? Because there's a few questions that I want to start asking. Well, I want to come, to question what the truth is of, the sun. Because right now we're talking about protecting ourselves from the sun, but then now we're talking about all these beautiful benefits and healing things that do happen from the sun. So if the sun can heal, obviously anything in excess can harm you. Water can harm you, food can harm you. Anything in excess will harm you. So that's not saying that, yes, keep things in moderation. Yes,
Mm.
obviously, if you're white, don't be in the sun for 6 hours a day. But also listen to your body. Because I remember when I was in Crete, I didn't wear sunscreen, but I also listened to my body. I went out for 20 minutes a day. Even when I was at the beach, when you're there for 1 to 2 hours, I also felt my body because I can feel when it's enough, right? And a lot of people, they push past that point for beauty reasons, for wanting to look a little tanner. I would also recommend listening to your body, like I always recommend. Listen to your body when you go out, when you're doing anything. It will give you signals when it's done. Obviously, it takes training, it takes awareness, just like it takes time to listen to yourself, to listen to your thoughts, to get yourself out of certain patterns. Going to the gym, everything takes a little time, a little practice to get you good at it. I've spent years, listening to myself, and also I spent decades ignoring myself. So at the same time,
Welcome to the team.
but at the same time, this is the vast majority of the population. We have been trained to essentially ignore ourselves because, we blindly put on things to ourselves. We blindly do all of these things, but now we're coming into a phase in human experience that is asking us to connect back to ourselves, connect back to nature, because ourselves and nature are no different. The only reason we're dysfunctional right now is because we're disconnected from nature. But when you look at nature, there is a rhyme and a reason to it, and there's always a balance and a homeostasis where everything, if a forest burns down, something else grows. So there is always a balance in nature. So if we can connect back to nature, and sun is part of nature, right? Sun is a vital part. If it wasn't for the sun, probably we wouldn't exist here. Because we'd either be in an ice age and it'd be like negative 100 outside, uh,
The
which is
plants
probably not.
wouldn't grow.
The sun is a vital aspect, and obviously it's not to be disregarded in any way. But at the same time, how can we manage and balance this to where should we be protecting ourselves from the sun, or should just we listen to our bodies without having, like, obviously if you have to be out, like, for example, the people that work outside, be a gardener, they're always outside, be it sportsmen, they go and they always have to be exposed in the sun during times, obviously wear some protection, right? To my understanding, wear something that covers, because typically your hands, I noticed they don't really get burned very often, and they'll be exposed all day for the most part. But, like, make sure your this part of your neck is covered, make sure your arms are, a bit covered, and your head is. But at the same time, I want people to de-stress themselves as much as possible. And if they don't have to, I prefer not to use anything. But if they prefer a cream or something, you said raspberry seed oil. The question is, how can we find a balance between protecting ourselves? Because you said, it's best to do one application. You said at one point, one application, what, per day, per week?
It's really individualized. Yes, it depends of the person condition, the health status, how the organs are working, especially the detoxification organs and so on. But I always say use as little as possible.
Yeah,
And everybody, as you say, has to listen to the body and realize by themselves like what means little as possible. Because for me, it's absolutely no to put a sun lotion because I've been before severely affected by chemical sensitivity.
sure.
And I don't want those chemicals in the body when I know that they
So
actually
what would
enter
you
the
put onto
chemical.
your skin?
Just the raspberry oil. And then I would wear protecting clothes like the linen. And I wouldn't be exposed like crazy to the sun, yeah, in the worst, let's say,
But
hours of the day.
if you absolutely had to be out in the sun all day, how would you
Just
handle
like I usually put the raspberry seed oil.
raspberry seed oil?
Mm.
And do you feel that that has, it
It
does
helped
protect your
me. It
skin?
helped me, but maybe
Okay.
it helped me more because my skin was already prepared for that. We have to also mention that the protection from the UV when you are using this raspberry seed oil is not that high, like for example the sun lotion. So it's very light, so you have to put quite
Can you explain the
regularly.
numbers a little bit to us? Like what 100 means, what 50 means, what 20 means?
Yeah, so general, the number means like how long you can be exposed to the sun when putting the sun lotion. So when you put the sun lotion, you don't put this while being outside, because you have to put already before leaving the house, so it has a time to work with your skin. The higher number, the longer period of time you can be exposed to the sun before applying another layer of the lotion. It's kind of general, but still it depends on the skin type.
And now the question is there actually studies that's been done where the sun actually does cause harm outside of excessive use? Because anything excessive, like we said, is problematic.
Mostly it's related to the skin cancer and the aging of the skin. And this is why people who are constantly exposed to sun, their skin usually look much older because of the UVA radiation. There's many studies done on animals, unfortunately, and of course on cells, that showing that the direct exposure not to the sunlight means the whole spectrum of the radiation, but to certain UV, like UVA, UVB, is linked to cancer, yeah, because it's shown that those radiation will damage the DNA. And when the damage occurs in the DNA and the no repair because of nutritional imbalance and some other stressors, there are mutations happening and the cell can become more like, let's say, cancer type cell. Those studies are done, as I mentioned, on animals, on cells. Of course, there's correlation with humans. The studies more like population studies were done when we know that those kind of exposures, not controlled exposure. I always want to make sure not controlled exposure. So you go to the sun and you lay down the beach without any protection, without the umbrella, without the clothes. Of course, it will be linked to the skin cancer at some period of time. But I want to also go back to the sunscreens. There was never studies that would check at the correlation between the composition of all those chemicals at once while they're being exposed to sun, heated, and they link with skin cancer. So there are studies that are showing that each separate chemical used in sunscreen can be cancerogenic. Actually, from the benzene family, they are type 1 cancerogens, means the strongest cancerogen. So yes, they may lead to the cancer, but nobody ever did studies of those combination of those chemicals, what they do to our body.
So realistically speaking, like I said, so most people are trying to avoid skin cancer, but they're putting cancerous chemicals on them to avoid skin cancer.
Yes.
So do you understand my brain is spinning here? So the question is, when the studies of skin cancer started like spiking in the human population?
When the sun's glasses started to be like more popular, and when the sunscreen started to be used.
So could that be spoken as a correlation in a just an
I
objective
don't want,
sense?
as a scientist, I cannot
Sure.
already claim this.
No, but this
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is I want to invite critical thinking. We're not making claims, we're not making stuff, but I invite people to think for themselves because I'm pretty sure in the last 150 years, roughly, even less, we created the light bulb. We've created external outside of candles, right? Outside of these things like that, we've created a dysregulation of the cycle. I did a little bit of studying on how humans slept, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And essentially, how they slept was around when the sun goes down, people have about a 2 hour period where they wind down and then they go to sleep, right? So in the winter, obviously the sun goes down like at 4 or something. So by 6-ish, people would go to sleep and then they would wake up around maybe 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. They would stay up for 2 hours and then they would go back to sleep until the sun came back up. For some reason, and that 2 hour of sleep in the middle was incredibly important for our health for hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, obviously, we go to bed whenever because at any point you can have light to keep you up, right? There's There's night shifts nowadays. There's people that are working through the night. There's people that are drinking too much coffee. There's people that are, stimulating stuff. And obviously, when you go out, it's also light. So in the last 100 years, let's just say, we've basically completely shifted how our circadian system really functions and how the sun really works with us and the day and the night cycle. And I feel like that, on top of everything else, has started creating significant dysregulation and problems within humanity. And I'm here to question what is true and what is being claimed, right? Because at the same, as much as I respect science, I also understand politics are involved, right? I also understand narratives are involved. So just because a study may say something doesn't conclusively say that this is how this works.
Mhm.
And typically, the best researcher is your body because it knows the truth. It knows what things are good for you, regardless of what information you might find. I would always say the body is the ultimate truth
Mhm.
because it'll tell you what you need, what you don't need, how long you should be out in the sun, how long you shouldn't be out. And if we just learn to listen to it, I think life would be infinitely more easier to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I want to mention, because you said about the science and believing
yeah,
in the science, I just read an article about editors of scientific journals, like really top scientific journals, that they started to question. Many of them left the job, left the journals, because they started to question the data that was produced by scientists and the claims that many of them looked like artificially produced data, or data that was heavily affected by some sponsorships. Yeah.
sure. But
So
where the
you
money
really,
goes, the
yes,
word goes.
yes. So you are telling to everybody, it's not that the science is bad. Like, we have so many
Of
things
course not.
because of science. Yeah, people
Sure,
are rescued because of science.
sure.
But in this current world, you really have to really look carefully at the information
And just
and
critically think.
critically
Like,
think,
yeah,
definitely. And as you mentioned, listen to the body, because it's the best teacher
yeah.
of ours. Yeah.
Specifically for you. Because, for example, we can give you some information that might resonate to some people, but not to everybody, right? But your body will always have information that will resonate specifically for you. Because there's no one size fits all for anything, but your body is the ultimate truth of how things work. And yes, it could also be completely dysregulated and completely imbalanced and not give you the right signals for a while. But that's a training process you have to go through of starting to listen to different forms of information and not just follow everything blindly. Because, as much as I appreciate doctors, they're also trained in a very specific way. And that doesn't mean that they have the ultimate truth. Most of the times, they don't have the answer. More or less, they're not trained to find the answer. They're trained to give you a solution from the field of possibility they have. And typically, that has to do with managing symptoms in the moment. They cannot diagnose what the symptom is. They'll say, I don't know, and throw some medicine at you because that is how they're trained to operate. This is not a criticism towards any individual. It's more of an enlightening of the system of how it's working. So for me, I always think in systems. And I sometimes disconnect that from any emotional opinions, but at the same time, everybody's specific plight is very important to some degree. But when you're looking in pattern recognition and different things, what things are working, what things are, it starts becoming a little obvious, let's just say, to the person that has the eyes to see what is happening and questioning certain narratives. So, just with this sun topic, if we just look on how things happen, let's just say in our last 100 years, you don't have to be a scientist to start questioning certain things. Start saying, hey, what's happening? This doesn't add up. That doesn't add up. I don't really need a scientific study to tell me something's off, right? And if science is saying something, typically it's, let's just say, some people call it fact, some people call it opinion, right? Because a fact is just data that's been repeated over and over again, right? That people made a conclusion that that is true. But realistically speaking, we can use that for anything. Some people believe the earth is flat. Some people believe it's round, right? And for them, they're seeing data over and over again, so they're concluding that as a fact. So this is where truth becomes almost like a philosophy. What actually is truth, and how can we find the truth, even though something seems factual, right? Maybe this can help shine some sunlight on your consciousness and invite a deeper thinking into how we just operate with life. Because I feel like the sun is a life giver, right? Because realistically speaking, the plants significantly benefit from the sun, right? Photosynthesis.
Mhm.
The animals more or less have fur that protects them fully from the sun, right? So the last question I have, just as a curiosity, is why are humans the only animals that suffer from the sun? Because I don't believe in any like I haven't seen any proof from any animal, be it a frog, be it a bison, be it a cat, be it a dog,
Because humans lost the connections with nature and the natural rhythm. So they are so disconnected also from the sun in that sense that they know when to be exposed and when not to be exposed. Look at the animals. Are they exposed all the time to sun? No. They know
Exactly.
when it's too much. They just know. The body will tell them. I look at, for example, my parents' dog. When she was a bit ill, she went out to be exposed to sun. And she wanted to be exposed to the sun because sun, for example, is known already to have antiviral effect. If you get like a bit of cold flu, or even it was related some studies to COVID, the radiation from the sun is able to kill the viruses, and that's why there's almost no cold flu and so on during the summertime. I believe that it's just the disconnection from the nature itself. That's why a human is so affected by like negative, let's say, aspects of the sun. Here, I also would like to ask something because we discussed the physical aspects of the sun, and I would like to go into the, let's say, like energetic body and the sun. And I would like to ask you something because we know that, well, we need energy. Yeah, we get energy from the food. Okay, when we eat food, there are calories, but it's not about the calories, it's about the nutrients. Sun has
the proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, of
yes,
course, yeah.
but sun plays an important role in the quality of our food because it, of course, affects through the photosynthesis the plants, but affects the soil. When the sun lands on the soil, it activates different microbes and fungi in the soil. So this fungi will decompose, like the mold we spoke last time, will decompose the organic matter and changes for the nutrients for the plants. Yeah, and the sun exposure for the plant is so important because it will shape the leaf, tell the plants where to flower, where to get fruits, how much antioxidants, colors, aroma, and so on to produce. And those, like different antioxidants, polyphenols, will affect our body. So we get through the food that is exposed to the sun, we get also energy, yeah, the sun energy. And of course, the energy from the food itself. But there are different, let's say, beliefs or kind of question marks about the fact that the sun exposure can be used as the pretty much almost the only source of energy for humans, same like for plants, like because plants have chlorophyll, so the dye in the leaves that will absorb the UV radiation, and then the whole photosynthesis can start. So at the energetic level, what do you think about that concept that being just exposed to sun will give you enough of energy? And as we mentioned already, yeah, it affects the mitochondria, but I'm not talking here about the physical energy. I'm talking about the energetic body.
Yes.
Can you have
So
some kind of opinion on that?
Yes, absolutely. So with plants, for example, it's not just the sun that they're getting from. They're also getting nutrients from the soil, right? From
Mhm.
the roots. And there's also a nutrient exchange from different plants, from different fungus. And so there's a balance between the quote unquote energetic, because the sun is more of an energetic source of energy, right? It shines. And then the physical is the nutrients, the roots. So it's the same thing with like a human, for example. The human has a physical body and has density, meaning it has physical material that needs physical nutrients to process. Now, when the human goes through a process of shedding some of that density, then less is required to feed the density, right? So
And
when you
here, I'm
have,
sorry, I have a
sure.
question. What means shedding the density?
So when I'm saying density, it's basically carbon-based forms, right? It's a carbon-based matter, right?
Mhm, like we are.
Carbon-based, yes, exactly. We're carbon-based, right? Meaning
Mhm.
that carbon is a dense mineral and each and every cell of our body is made of carbon, right? So basically any organic matter, more or less, is made of
Mhm.
carbon. As if you burn anything to a certain degree, it becomes black, right?
That's why
And
it's
it
called
turns
organic because of the C
exactly,
means the carbon.
exactly. So everything is anything organic matter, be it our bodies, have density in that sense. Density
Mhm.
is just meaning energetic heaviness.
Mhm.
The less heavy the density becomes, like in esoteric understandings, there's a third density, there's a fourth, there's a fifth, there's a sixth. Moving forward, each one going up has significantly less density, meaning
And
there's
those
less.
densities are also like some kind of hidden emotions, unprocessed emotions,
Exactly.
or okay.
So, like for example, fear, shame, guilt, blame, those are all heavier emotions. Joy, love, freedom, pleasure, all of those are higher vibrational emotions. So everything is in the frequency and vibration of how a molecule is operating or how a form of energy is operating. If it's operating in a lower state, it's going to have more gravity to it, more weight, more matter. The higher vibrational it is, the less matter it holds. So
Like the
different emotions have different understandings and have different weight to them, right? So when we're talking about cellular data, I mean our cellular density, basically the more density you have in your body, the more you need to feed it with density, right? So that means organic matter. So organic matter typically needs organic matter to function, right? The less, not necessarily organic matter you have in your body, but the less heavy that organic matter becomes, the less it needs organic matter to function. So essentially, when you start ascending in a spiritual concept, you are starting to shed how heavy your carbon-based form is. And the upgrade that you say to this carbon-based form would be a crystalline form. A crystalline, it becomes basically an entirely different molecular structure, where carbon has a very specific structure and crystalline data has a different structure. Crystalline is basically part energy, part density. So in, let's just say, the fifth density, once a human reaches to that potential, to that state, they can actually choose if they want to be in as physical matter or non-physical matter. Because at that point, you start shifting, your biology operates differently from very dense third dimensional or third density biology. So this, for someone who has no framework on this sounds as crazy as it can be. For people that have read, like for example, the book The Law of One, by Ra, that gives you a little bit of understanding of density, of how things work. And you can also research this topic. There's a million different people speaking about density, dimensions, different stuff like that. Obviously, if most likely, if you're listening to us, you have potentially some framework of this. And if not, I invite you, if this resonates with you, to investigate more. But essentially, all I'm saying is the equation is the more physical matter you have, the more physical matter you need to give to get energy, right? So you eat food, be it a protein, a fat, or a carbohydrate with vitamins, nutrients, and water, and then your body breaks that down into bioavailable energy, glucose, all that stuff, and then you let go of the rest. The less of that density you need to feed, the less you need to eat, or at least your caloric requirements will go down. I personally, from my experience, have noticed I went from eating roughly 4,000 calories a day to maintain my body weight to eating almost half and still maintaining the same muscle mass, so maintaining the same BMI, and maintaining the same energy levels.
I think many people would question,
yeah.
how did you do that?
So it's literally following specifically what I do is going to be irrelevant to you because my unique architecture and body operates in a different way, as will yours. So the best way to follow at least a similar process is start feeling those heavier emotions. Stop thinking the thoughts. And this is not going to happen by tomorrow, but the more awareness the more conscious you can become of what is unconsciously running your life, the more density you start letting go, the more heaviness you start letting go, and the less heavy you are physically, the lighter you will feel, and the lighter your life will become. Lighter meaning less stress, less pressure, less fear, less everything that feels very heavy. And you will feel more joy, you will feel more peace, you will feel the lighter experiences of life. And just like I said in a post 2 days ago, or maybe even yesterday, the whole point of this world, this life, is to have fun. The second we stop having fun is when we lose the game. Most people at the end of their life, when they're asked what could I have done better, a lot will say, I wish I treated life as a game instead of taking it so seriously. And the more serious we take life, the heavier life becomes. The more fun we have, if we look at our childhood, the more whimsy there is, the more fun, the more exploration, the more things happen in a much more enthusiastic and pure way, right?
And
So
whatever
I
you
guess
do, there should be excitement. When there is no
exactly.
excitement, it's probably nothing for you.
Exactly. So, but there's many different tools and many different tricks you can use. And obviously, if you look back our past 11 episodes, you'll have a lot of information on all the different facets of life, on how you can get to a point where the rules that you thought you were following don't necessarily apply in the same way that you are used to. And that's when life becomes more fun, more enjoyable, and you start treating it like a game, essentially, that you just have, that you're learning the rules of, instead of being a character that's being controlled in the game, and start being the main character. That's the difference. So I invite you all to be main characters of your life, and not just be the how they call them NPCs, non-player characters. Basically
Neither the
fillers.
victims.
Exactly, the victims that basically go around and basically are backgrounds for the main characters, right? So, but everyone is a main character of their life, but everyone forgets that they have the script, they have the pen, they have all of the authority they can do to run their life and to script their life however they want. But because we forget, because of a lot of
Fear.
oppressive fears, a lot of control mechanisms, of course that drives us away from that. That's my wish. If anything was listened to in this podcast, that would be my wish, is just to start asking questions. And that's it.
Thank you. And don't feel shy asking questions and don't feel bad if you have different opinion than the other people do have, because it's your truth. So I believe that there's never one truth, like in the sense that people should be allowed to have different opinions. Is it in society, in between friends, in relationships, and so on? The point is that people should tolerate each other's opinion, respect that, but still preserve its own. Well, thank you for this explanation. And thank you,
Absolutely.
everybody, for listening to the episode about the sun. I hope you feel more sun inside you now after this episode. And just few reminders. If you really want to be healthier exposed to the sun, prepare your body. So expose yourself slowly. Use the protection clothes. Expose yourself in the morning to really set the circadian rhythm. Be really friend also with the darkness in the evening. So don't expose yourself to the blue light in the evening, but to the natural blue light from the sun during the day. So no sunglasses for that actually purpose. But again, you decide what you want to do. You decide what information resonates with you. We are just sharing our own opinion. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe and listen to our next episodes. Thank you very much.
This is Source Medicine.